Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is Michelle, and who is here with me?
It's JD.
It's JD. It's always JD, and
Every
it's always
time.
Michelle. It's always us.
Every dang time.
This is our last Shudder exclusive and or original for the month. Did we end on a high note? We don't know. There's only one way to find out.
Well,
JD, what are we talking about?
We know. You and I
don't know your thoughts, though. I
True.
honestly don't know how you feel about this.
I'm
excited.
honestly also in a similar place about you. There are things about this movie that, we'll talk about that in a moment. So, guys, first of all, if this is your first time picking up an episode of We Watch Shudder, thank you. If you're wondering what this podcast is all about, it's right there in the name. We Watch Shudder. If you don't know what Shudder is sort of like Netflix for horror movies, and they put out a lot of original and exclusive content, pretty much like one new title, sometimes two new titles every single week. And that's what we talk about here, is those original and exclusive movies. And today we are talking about a release called what, Michelle?
Resurrection. It is a Shudder exclusive.
A Shudder exclusive, I believe an IFC Midnight production, if I'm not mistaken. IFC Films.
That sounds right.
Yes. And it stars Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth. Couple of real well-known names and very respected and talented actors. Michelle, do you want to read the summary of this movie for the good people at home?
I absolutely can, especially because it is short. Resurrection, the description straight from the Shudder website is: a woman's carefully constructed life is upended when an unwelcome shadow from her past returns, forcing her to confront the monster she's evaded for 2 decades. A Shudder exclusive. JD, I am dying to know, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Resurrection?
Okay, well, I have to do this in 2 parts, and I will also tell you why. I have to say, if I'm evaluating the movie as academically as possible, just on its own merits, this is a really, really good movie. It does have some things about it that I think are a little bit, could be tweaked to improve it a little bit. As with a lot of movies, I feel like it's a little bit too long, and it gets a little long in the tooth. But we're actually going to talk about that in a moment as well. So as a movie, evaluating just the movie itself, I feel like this. I think I would have given this like 4.25 skulls. 4.25 skulls on Resurrection.
You want
However,
that to be your official? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yeah. But if we're talking about my experience of the movie, as we often say is a big portion of our scores, I have to say my experience of this movie was unfortunately like a 2, because some jerk brain spoiled the movie for me on the day it was released, before I could see it. We're going to talk about that when we get into the spoilers section. So yes, actually, I mean, I probably didn't need to do that in such a dramatic fashion. It's a fantastic movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of good stuff here. It was just such a bummer that because of a stupid headline that got shared into my Twitter feed
from people at Shudder.
Right,
Come on,
from
Shudder.
People who should have known better.
We're going to get into it. Come on, Shudder.
We'll talk about it, guys. I really enjoyed Resurrection. Michelle, how did you feel about this movie? I'm genuinely curious here as well.
Yes. So I was super curious. You're going for a 4.25.
Yeah.
This movie, sometimes you watch a movie and you can immediately tell this is going to be divisive for a lot of people. It's going to be loved or hated. There's not going to be too much of a middle road. I also fall in an extreme for this. I can tell that there's going to be a lot of people who this message doesn't resonate with, and they can't connect with the characters. They don't understand what the lead is doing. They don't understand, a lot of the decisions and why they're made, and they seem foolish. I am not one of those. This is a 5-skull movie for me.
Nice. I
loved it.
That's where I was, because I mean, and obviously not going to dig into anything specifically, but just because of how, you know, I know you pretty well, and you've talked about some things in your life experience here on the show. And just thinking about that and thinking about how this movie related to other movies, I definitely was like, Michelle is either going to fucking love this or fucking hate it. So
did you also think of Lucky and Watcher? Because
yes,
I
course,
did.
Of course.
And I was like, I didn't like those, but yet
Watcher.
this one is perfect. Yeah. So I was like, oh, similar themes, but different.
Right. But and you know, that's actually something that was planning to talk about as well. That's crazy that we're having. I mean, maybe we're starting to like get all synced up, like our periods in order or whatever. You know?
Yeah,
this
awesome.
podcast.
We're syncing up, JD.
Yeah, fabulous. All right, guys. So that's a 5 skulls from Michelle, a 4 1/4 skulls from JD, which I believe puts us at like a 4 3/8 skulls as our 4.375.
Yes, 4.2 or 4.625. Yes.
Oh, 4.625. No, that's more
Yes.
like 5/8. That's a 5/8
Oh my God.
skulls, man.
I believe you.
That's
I could do that
good.
math if I had like a pen and paper. I'm not a mental math person.
You said 0.625, right?
0.625.
Yeah, that's 5/8. Yeah.
Exciting.
Right. That's a math nerd. Okay, guys. So
Yeah.
if you do want to see the movie before we spoil it, definitely do that. Big spoiler warning.
I highly recommend watching this one.
So do I.
It's not too scary, but
here's
woo.
the thing. I am going to tell you what happens at the end of this movie, and that's going to ruin the experience for you. Take my word for it, as somebody who was told more or less what happens at the end of this movie, and it ruined the experience for me. Go watch it, guys. It's really great.
And if you don't want to get spoiled, you're going to want to pause right
now. All right.
Hopefully they came back. Let's get into it. Where do we start? Do you want to start with your spoiling?
No, I don't even know, Michelle. I think... Yeah, I mean, we might as well, right? That's obviously the
I have
hot
so much to
button
talk
issue
about.
here. We can definitely talk about the movie, and we will, and we should, and that's awesome. But so I was at work today. Have not had a chance to see the movie yet because it just dropped here in Fargo, North Dakota at 3:00 in the morning. And so I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Plan to watch it here day one because that's what we do on this show. And I'm just scrolling through my Twitter feed, and out of nowhere in my Twitter feed, I see an article that's been shared by someone, and the headline of that article is, "Let's talk about the body horror ending of Resurrection." And I sat there dumbfounded. Like, who in their right fucking mind would ever write that headline? And then who would ever, like, see that and then be like, oh, we gotta share this with people? Like, who's responsible for putting this into my feed? And here's what's wild about it. I actually clicked into the article, and whoever wrote this article very clearly doesn't think that's a spoiler headline, because the very first thing when you click into the article below the date and the author's name is a spoiler warning. It says there are spoilers in this article. Bro, there's spoilers in your fucking headline. And clearly, like I said, clearly this person didn't believe that was a spoilery headline. So let me, on the off chance, maybe they listen to this, because I'm going to tag them in the post when I put it on Twitter. Because this is... Here's what happens. You said the body horror ending of Resurrection. Okay, first of all, Michelle, have you seen any of the trailers or marketing or promotional materials about this movie in the lead up to its release?
I had seen nothing, absolutely nothing, except for the poster.
Okay. Have you looked at, like, the Wikipedia articles and the IMDb page and, like, the basic descriptions and information there?
No, I looked at the
Okay.
IMDb page to bookmark. That's
Okay,
it.
well, I
go
wish
as
you would
blind as possible.
come in a little bit more prepared for me here,
I'm
Michelle.
sorry. Now I'm prepared. I can go Google
kidding.
now.
I'm kidding. Anyway, my
Yep.
point is, nothing in the presentation of this film and the marketing putting forward of it, nothing on Wikipedia in its description in the genres that are represented, nothing on IMDb, nothing about any way this movie has been presented suggests there's anything body horror about it to begin with.
Nothing even in the movie.
Nothing
really.
would
It's a
suggest
huge,
there's
huge
no.
surprise.
And here's the thing: that phrasing is exactly it is the body horror ending. What does that tell me? That tells me right away before I've even seen the movie is there's not a lot of body horror in this movie. It just builds up to one big crazy off the wall scene. How do I know that? Because if there was body horror throughout this movie, you wouldn't have said, let's talk about the body horror ending of Resurrection. You would have said, let's talk about the ending of the body horror movie Resurrection. For that matter, why couldn't you have just said, let's talk about the ending of Resurrection? Why did you have to mention body horror at all? Because you've clearly seen the movie, and you know that that's the only moment of body horror in the entire movie. And you put that in your headline that was released on the day this movie was released. What is wrong with you? And it gets even worse because now I'm going.
It gets worse.
It gets worse. Yeah, because now I'm going because so they're going to say, yeah, but what do you ultimately you know there's some kind of body horror thing that happens at the end of the movie. Yeah, going in, except here's the problem. 20 or so minutes into this movie, there's a weird dude, and you find out that supposedly, on some level, he ate a baby and claims that 20 years later, the baby is still alive inside his body. And I've seen every fucking horror movie that matters in the last 50 years. Of course, my immediate assumption, knowing that there's a crazy body horror ending, is, this movie ends with her cutting that baby out of this dude's gut. And that's exactly what fucking happened.
This is one of the angriest moments I've ever seen from you ever.
I
think it's justified.
I thought I had calmed down. Like I really,
Oh,
and I had. I
you're
really
definitely
did.
containing it, but you're definitely furious.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I thought I had calmed down, but I have clearly gone back into it because this was.
Yeah.
And one of my big things I mentioned there, I was like, this movie, it felt like it was a little long. But I have to also say, did it really feel like it was a little long and overblown? Or did I just feel that way because I knew in my gut inevitably where this was going and it was just not there yet? There's nothing in this movie. That ending is very clearly supposed to be a fucking giant shock surprise.
It was.
Yeah, for I'm sure it was incredible for you.
Yeah, it was.
And don't get me wrong, it was still very effective. I'm able to look at it detachedly enough that I can appreciate the movie still, but what I didn't get was the experience of this. I didn't get to have that moment because this person wrote that headline, and it gets worse. Because the reason that headline was in my Twitter feed is because it was retweeted by Craig Engler, the general manager of Shudder at AMC Networks. The general manager of Shudder retweeted that insanely spoilery headline out to people who are following him. People like myself who know horror movies and who have seen everything there is. And will immediately hear, this guy claims he's got a 20-year-old baby inside him, and know that, that baby's getting cut out of his guts.
Yeah.
If I hadn't known to expect a body horror ending, I would have spent this entire movie just being like, this guy is just a fucking chaos, like he's like a gaslighting, manipulating wizard. And he's convinced, like he's manipulating and has some sort of control over this woman. I never would have expected where this movie goes. And don't get me wrong, I also want to talk at some point after I let you speak here for a while and I catch my breath about the ending and what I actually think about it and the movie, but I could not believe. And when I saw the tweet, I was like, wait, they didn't really. I was like, okay, there's got to be some sort of hitch here, right? Some sort of gag. And so I watched the movie, and I just, like, the further and further I got into it, the more I dreaded it, because I was like, this is going exactly where I already know it's going. So anyway, that was my unfortunate experience with this movie, you guys. I know Michelle also, when we talked earlier, mentioned that she had some things she wanted to say about this film. So I am going to drink a lot of water and try to calm down a little bit and let Michelle talk for a little while.
To be fair, I think that you are 100% justified in being angry, because I mean, this got a 5 skull from me because of my experience and the doubt that I had about, like, is this guy crazy? Is this reality? What is happening? Like, that experience of going back and forth trying to figure out, is this going to get supernatural at some point? That would have been ruined, and I would have been very sad about it, and I think you are completely justified. We can go ahead and just get into the ending and dissect that, because I have a lot of little things to say leading up to that, but I think we just have to talk about what happened. If you have not seen this movie, if you made it through all of that and you didn't watch the movie, I have questions sometimes. Sometimes I get it. Like, I understand why some people would just want to listen to us rant about a movie they haven't seen. Sometimes we're really funny, but this one, like, what are you doing, yo weirdos?
I was just, and like, look, you know, I have to believe that clearly they didn't think they were being as spoilery as they were with the headline, and clearly somebody didn't think it was that spoilery either and were willing to retweet it. But I don't understand how you could possibly not think. Anyway, okay, I'm done. I'm sorry.
As someone who also sometimes screws up on social media, I get it. Sometimes I put things and I go, oh, I didn't even realize. Like, I'm sure, I don't think that one of the main guys of Shudder would have deliberately ruined a movie and then been like,
right.
ha ha ha,
yeah.
suckers.
I mean, he is still in charge of, like, the greatest thing that's happened to horror fans in the last 20 years, so...
We can forgive him this one faux pas. But Craig Engler, we need a handwritten apology addressed to JD. He's very upset. He's still wearing his We Watch Shudder shirt, but it's covered in tears.
It is. It is.
Okay. Anyway,
so
to
that
the actual
Michelle,
ending.
So guys, if you have I think to talk about the ending, we have to talk about the basic plot a little bit just to build up to it, right?
Course.
So let me do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Rebecca Hall is this woman who we sort of deduce through the way scenes play out. She's a single mom. Her child is just about to turn 18 and go off to college. And she's some kind of boss at some kind of company. I don't know if they ever really specified exactly what it was, but it's irrelevant, I think, to the movie. But she suddenly one day at a conference sees this person who it turns out is, as she claims, a ultimately psychopathic person from her past, who she knew at one point, who manipulated and gaslit her as a very young girl into all sorts of painful and ridiculous and shameful and things and whatnot. And then they had a baby, and he supposedly killed and ate the baby and then made her believe the baby was still alive inside him. And so she finally ran away and hasn't seen him for 20 years, and now suddenly he's back in her life. Is that pretty much it, Michelle?
Yeah, I think you even got into more details than I would have. You perfectly summed it up.
Like, and that's like, don't get me wrong, that's a hell of a premise for a movie. I was like, oh Jesus, where is this going? And of course, through the whole movie, I'm just like, is this guy even real? Does he actually exist, or is she this movie more than those other movies we talked about, Lucky and Watcher, because it does play like a movie about a woman who is being violated and manipulated and abused by a man, and nobody will believe her or listen to her. Everybody just thinks she's crazy. But this movie, more than any of the other two, has genuinely made me still, after having seen it, she goes so far over the edge and becomes so unhinged that it makes me wonder how much of that man and his presence and their experience together is even real. Right? Because as far as I can tell, and as far as I remember, he never interacts directly with any other person in the film. You see him walking around town, going in and out of places, but he never interacts with anybody. Like, I find myself wondering if he even existed at all. And then she goes to this place where he is, and apparently he did exist, or I don't know, maybe the whole thing was part of his delusion. Because what does he do, Michelle? Or what does she do, Michelle?
She cuts him open. She takes her son Benjamin out, and then it's a happy ending.
She cuts his guts open and just starts pulling intestines and innards and things out of his guts. And then, wouldn't you know it, turns out, no fucking shit, there's that baby right there in that dude's fucking guts. And she pulls that baby out, and she's loving it. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on right now? Like, I still very much was like, if I had not known that was happening, it would have been such a fucking intense moment. Because the movie is very psychological and calm. And then, like, that last scene is very suddenly violent, and they're, like, stabbing each other with cheap kitchen knives, and it just, God, it looked rough. And it's just, the effects were really good. It's like a complete fucking mental breakdown, and I really kind of dug it.
I spent the whole movie, or not the whole movie, but, like, enough of the movie wondering, not so much is Tim Roth, aka David, who, by the way, I have a very weird crush on Tim Roth, so this was a weird experience for me, that he was just such an evil psychopath, and I was like, but no, Reservoir Dogs, what are you doing? Stop. I have a weird thing for Tim Roth, and I had to get over that to continue with the movie. It will continue being a weird thing for Tim Roth, but I had to be mentioned. But so I spent the whole movie not so much wondering, is David real, but is David telling the truth? Did he eat a baby and keep it alive for 20 years? I wavered so much because I was like, nothing about this movie is supernatural. The entire thing is grounded in reality. It is grounded in a lot of manipulation, which we will get into, and I did want to get into, but I was worried about getting too serious at the beginning. But now I've realized that we're 23 minutes into this, and if they're gonna listen, they're gonna listen. So we'll get into it at the end.
Let's just go for it.
But the point where she is pulling out his intestines, and she has this moment where she accepts that she was wrong and that there is no Benjamin inside of him. And there's this second, and then nope, there is a baby, and my mouth opened so wide that I was like, what? And it did not close again, because I was like, you serious? And then it goes into that, like, afterlife fuzzy happy ending, which I had to go read many interviews because I had a lot of questions. Nobody on the staff, the writers, the actors, nobody is 100% sure what the actual ending it is supposed to be open-ended. It's not implying that either she had a psychotic break or this actually happened as it is or anything. They just all say it's up for interpretation, and I 100% think when she had that moment of reality that she snapped so hard and went, I can't live with that. And that's what that scream at the very end is all about, or like the gasp that she lets out.
Okay, so, like, you don't actually believe that baby was real, right?
Nope.
Yeah, nope. Okay, yeah, because I, like, absolutely, like, the baby is not, like, I cannot imagine an interpretation of this film where the baby is real.
Oh, it's supposed to be up for interpretation about whether the baby is real.
Well,
it really is. I had to go look up interviews is it supposed to be? And they're like, it might be real, it might not.
No, I believe that some people might take it that way. What I'm saying is that I am willing to flat out say that anybody who thinks that baby was real is wrong. You're wrong.
If it hadn't, that final scene is so white and so fuzzy around the edges that I thought it was so apparent that it was a dream. But when she took the baby out, I 100% believed it until it went to that happy ending white. Yeah, really? I 100% went, holy shit, this movie did that. Okay, I believed it.
No, and so that's what I mean when I say this one a little bit more, or significantly more rather, than a movie like Lucky or Watcher. Definitely this movie. So like I think those movies all exist on kind of this spectrum of the victimized, stalked, violated woman, right? And they're different levels of that same portrayal. And this one, to me, because I agree with you to a certain extent, my ultimate interpretation of this, because when I became convinced that the baby was not real, and I never believed the baby was actually real, that's when I also started thinking, was David even real, right? And so, but here's what I think is the ultimate story here. This is the way I took it. David is real. David was doing exactly what we were talking about, which is somehow through incredible skill and maybe just her Maggie, was that her name? Margaret Maggie
when he knew her.
They maybe just her unhealed trauma from that past experience, just in general. I think he successfully manipulated her into believing that he really had this baby inside of him, and he was just this fucking bizarre, like, oddly psychopathic dude who was just like, that's how he manipulates people. And then she kills him, and then I also agree with you that I think what happens is in that moment when she realizes what she's done, she snaps, and then she sees the baby. And then I actually interpreted that last scene with the white room and the echoey audio and all of that. I ultimately, personally interpreted that as her bleeding out and dying. But I guess that is probably more just guesswork than any other part of that. But I don't know. I guess that's kind of how I ultimately interpreted the whole thing.
Yeah, I could see that being like a heavenly afterlife kind of situation where she gets what she wants. She has a good relationship with her daughter. She has her son back. Everything's peachy keen.
It's definitely, at the very least, a hallucination or a dream, for sure. It's not reality, one way or the other.
Yeah, I went back and forth about the baby thing so many times to the point where I thought maybe, and until she actually pulls the baby. Here's how quickly this movie had me changing my opinion. I thought he was just manipulating her until she actually pulls the baby physically out of him, and then I believed that baby was real. And then they went to the afterlife scene or whatever that was, and I went, oh, never mind, no, she broke. Like, I went back and forth so much trying to figure out what the reality was going to be, because this is just okay. Let's get into the manipulation a little bit, because it's hard to talk about this without talking about that. And like I said, and I did have time to look up reviews because I finished it and I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? And I had to go read. I had to just start taking in reviews, interpretations, interviews. It was one that I immediately had to know more about.
Yeah, this is why I don't know why Michelle was commenting on us being 23 minutes into the episode already, because as soon as she finished the movie, the first message she sent to me was, tonight's episode might be a long one. I have so much to say.
Yeah, but we were 23 minutes in, and I had like taken the cliff notes and tried to like cut my thoughts down, because I was like, I don't want to get into like mental manipulation and how fucked up it is, because that's going to be too serious, and we try to be entertaining. But you know what? Fuck it. Come along for the ride.
Let's talk about it. This movie's intense.
So there are going to be a lot of people who don't understand how this could possibly happen.
Right.
And I think that is one of the best things about this movie. From the first 5 minutes, it is it is so just. I say it is art about a lot of movies that I like, but I think that's just because it's hard to say that's a good movie and elicit the same kind of emotional reaction that I have to these kind of movies. It immediately starts with her coaching a younger woman who is an intern working underneath her about how to deal with a man in her life who is making her feel not good. And she says, well, just tell him to fuck off then. And she's immediately this very strong woman who knows exactly what to do, exactly what to say. She's clearly like big boss lady with her own office. She's going to go jogging. And you know that only successful women jog. That's how you know. In a movie, if it's like, oh, you look good and you're jogging, clearly you're well off, living in this beautiful apartment. She's a pretty good mother. I mean, obviously,
Wait,
she has a
what?
strained... No, she has a strained relationship with her teenage daughter because she works too much. She's still providing as well as she can. Her daughter gets hurt and she feels horrible about not being there right away, but then she is there. I think she's doing what she can. She's not mother of the year by any means. She's not an awful mother, though.
I kind of took her as, like, even from the get-go as being kind of a helicopter mom, just like way overly concerned about the kid, and like I think the kid even gives you that impression right away. They're just like, Mom, it's not a big deal. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, and I agree, but that's her attempt at being a good mother, and it is causing a strained relationship and pushing her further away. I'm saying that if the worst thing you're doing to your child, as someone who has experience with that, if the worst thing you're doing to your child is being too overly protective, but you're not being like abusive, there is clearly a line where people become abusive by being too involved. But I think she's trying. So like, she's not the worst person in the entire world. One tiny thing. So you had mentioned something you messaged me, but you haven't mentioned in this episode yet, was something along the lines of, I don't understand what 5-second sex scenes will bring to a movie,
right?
Or something like that.
What I had said was, someday somebody is going to have to explain to me what a 5-second flash of people pretending to fuck will ever add to a movie. And of course, I said that way too soon because the whole her sexual proclivities obviously ultimately ends up playing pretty significantly into the plot of the movie, but I feel like my point still stands. There are so many movies where just like for no reason
I have a
at
really
all,
good
there's
counterpoint.
like a 5-second shot of people pretending to fuck for no reason at all.
In some movies, yes. In this one, I couldn't respond to your message because I specifically wrote down a note about that 5-second sex scene that I was going to talk about. Here's what it brought to the movie. It brought something I have never seen. Oh my God, my cat is knocking a painting off the wall. Remember when I said before we started recording, hey, I just realized, I realized Samwise Gamgee is in here, and he's probably going to be a shithead. Give me 2 seconds, and then I'm going to tell you about that sex scene.
No
Hang
problem.
on.
Michelle's, while Michelle's dealing with the cat, I'm going to guess that what she's about to say is that what she liked seeing in that scene was a woman experiencing an orgasm on film.
Oh, my God. Anyway, we are back. Hello. Anyway, this 5-second sex scene, as I was saying. The reason that I wrote down a note about it is because for the first time in a movie in my entire life, without any other context or importance, while she is orgasming, there's the sound of a vibrator in that scene.
Oh, my God. Is there really?
There absolutely is, and I got so fucking excited because in all the other things that they are showing you about this woman being a badass bitch who is literally like a boss bitch and counseling her intern, she does not care if anybody is intimidated by the sex toy that she needs to get her rocks off. She is using that sex toy.
I totally missed that detail. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So when you said, like, I don't understand, I went, no, this is very, very important.
Okay. No, that's here's the funny part is while you were dealing with Samwise, I put a guess on the recording about what your reasoning was going to be, and I feel like a real dummy because what I said was Michelle's gonna say something like, "I thought it was what it added to the movie is for the first time I got to see like a portrayal of purely female pleasure on screen in a film." And
Yes.
I didn't I
Kind of.
didn't even. I don't. I'll have to go back and watch. I mean, I believe you, but I totally missed that detail. Holy shit!
Yeah.
Okay,
And from that
that's
moment, I
fair.
went like, this movie is putting in those details because there's absolutely the sound of a vibrator, and I've never seen that in a movie before.
That's
It has always
funny.
been a thing where if somebody introduces a sex toy, it is part of the plot. There's a dialogue about it. It's for comedy most of the time. No, this woman is just like, screw it, this is what I need, and I love that. She is such a boss bitch.
Oh, for
but,
sure. You know what
so
else was mixed into the audio though?
Oh no. What?
Babies crying.
Wait, in the sex scene?
No, not in the sex scene. No.
Okay, I was like, what?
In the audio of the movie, I should have been more specific. No.
Yeah.
Like at the
I was
end,
very
at the end
concerned.
when she's like all like snuggled up to David and just like being manipulated, like they very
Mm-hmm.
subtly incorporate those baby cries into the sound. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I think I caught it another time, but not at that one.
Yeah.
But so this episode is off the rails because my cat tried to knock down my shit. And then right in the middle of a very good point that I was making about vibrators. And then I had to go kick him out and he just started screaming at me because he's a very vocal cat.
Oh.
Hopefully the recording picked that up too. He's very loud. But so they start the movie with this woman who is clearly well established and is all the cliches of what a strong woman is supposed to be. And they get all of that completely 100% correct. And then she has a fucking breakdown at what seems to be just like an everyday occurrence meeting. Later on, we find out it's a seminar, but just she's going about her day and she breaks so hard. And it was another moment where I was like, fuck, I am totally on board with where this is going, because it shows that you can be the strongest person in all other ways, but if something breaks you, you can't control that. You know, something might come up from your past, and this was 20 years prior, and now suddenly she's a wreck and she's not going to work and she's not sleeping. And then the fact that she kind of like relapses back to what she was doing immediately, it just I don't know, because like the beginning of these kinds of relationships always start off so gradually. They're not like that at the beginning. This is very unique in the sense that this has been a long time of separation and her being free from that and her thinking that she healed and she's a different person. The second he comes back into her life, he's like, just do me this one little thing, and it starts all over again. And that was so jarring and so effective for me, because it was just like, ugh, no, why?
Yeah, and I also really liked like that first scene, because you see, you know, there's the several sequences where she sees him in the distance and just kind of freaks out, and we don't understand why. But in that first sequence where she finally crosses the street over to the park and encounters him, and where he spends the first couple of minutes of that interaction just literally pretending that he's not the person he is. And they just so well established that, okay, this is definitely the bad guy, right? Like, no matter what happens.
That smile.
Right, no matter what happens throughout the movie, and they're definitely going to try to convince you that she's crazy and that she's just flipping out and over nothing. And like her daughter is like, Mom, you're having a breakdown, right? And it's... Like it, because it is a wild story, right? Like, who would believe that? Like, like if somebody, like, I thought that's why I thought that scene where she's telling the backstory to that lady in the office, which first of all is that very obvious sort of like, oh, we're just gonna put the camera on Rebecca Hall for 7 minutes unbroken and let her talk, which is fantastic, but like that experience of just like who could possibly believe that story? So yeah, of course nobody believes her. But the fact remains, like I said, I do believe that he ultimately, even though I suspected for a while or I vacillated for a while, I do believe he was a real person, and he was just really able to get inside her head because of how much he had fucked her up previously, which she had never fully dealt with and healed from.
Yeah, she never went to therapy. She said she'd never told anybody about
Right.
it. So imagine just coming face to face with this guy who, the quote that she used was, "He forbade me from giving birth."
Right.
That is just, it's that level of manipulation where there's nothing she can, I mean, there's things she can do about it, but there's nothing she was like going to do
Right.
about it. And he just said, "You're not allowed to do this." So she immediately felt broken because she broke one of his rules. It's one of those situations where you can't win. And it's just, oh my God, it got to me so much because I think this movie also, it did something that I think was a good choice in that they never mention any physical abuse.
Nope.
This is all about mental abuse and mental manipulation. And
Well, I guess
It's-
I would say with the one caveat that a lot of the kindnesses definitely sounded like they would ultimately
Yes.
be very painful or uncomfortable.
Mhm. Yeah, but it's also this area that she has to go to the police and say, "He's harming me." Well, what is he doing? He's making me sit in an uncomfortable position in a park. It's one of those things where, like, clearly he is fucked up and he's doing this to her. And there's not, like, other people aren't going to be like, "Oh, well," they'll just be like, "Stop going to the park then." And why are you walking barefoot to work?
Right.
Just don't
and
do those
because-
things. Like,
And the answer to that ultimately is, well, you see, he ate my son 20 years ago, and he's still alive inside David's belly.
Yep.
What?
and
What?
and that also, that scenario of "he ate my son" is so,
It's fucked up.
it's more, I think the fact that this goes to those extremes of, like, it's so unbelievable, but then what's the alternative is kind of the thing. Like,
Right.
if she believes that he ate the son, that's fucked up. But she has to have hope that, like, maybe he's still alive and in there and everything's fine. She comes home and the baby's gone, like, is the good alternative that he's living inside this guy who says that he's living inside of him, or is it better to assume that your son is dead?
That's the other thing I wanted to point out. I absolutely believe David killed that baby. I don't believe David. I'm not even sure if I believe David actually ate the baby. I absolutely believe David killed that baby.
The 2 fingers left on the counter is fucked up.
Yeah, it is.
And I think this movie, I was already, like I said, that initial thing where I was like, yeah, you're a cliche boss bitch. I love it. Oh, now you're because I knew nothing. So I was like, oh, now you're introducing a previous abuser of some sort. Okay, we've seen this before, but you're a boss bitch. You broke. I like the 2 extremes. And then that monologue she gave just cinched it for me, because the things she's talking about, to an extent, it's believable. Then it crosses into, that's fucking crazy for us to hear that he's talking about how he's God and how she starts hearing her baby inside of him. As an outside observer, that's fucking insane. That's what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But then you watch her go through the transformation where she is exhausted. Sleep deprivation can make you do the craziest things. I bet she was sleep deprived as hell back when she knew David.
Yeah.
And was also a young woman who didn't know a lot, and he was much older and probably had a lot more experience
ultimately the whole
manipulating.
point of
Yeah.
sorry, that's the whole point of the kindnesses, right? It's that physical exhaustion and torment and manipulation to put you into a very, it's almost a type of hypnosis. It puts you into a very suggestible state.
Mm-hmm. And you're watching the beginning of the movie and you're like, this is a very strong woman who knows exactly how to deal with people being awful. You tell them to fuck off. She would never let this happen to her. And then we watch her let it happen a second time in her life, and you just see her
by the same person, no less.
and you just watch her get beat down immediately. And it's so effective because you're like, no, you're not the same woman from when you were 18. You're entirely different. You know exactly what to do. You're very strong. You're teaching your daughter Abby to be very strong. You're mentoring interns in your office.
Right.
You're not going to let that happen. And it does.
Well, and I mean, that's sort of the crux of that story, right?
Yeah.
Is like, even if you believe every word of that story, how does anybody like she sees herself as the bad guy in that story because she abandoned her son, and just like, it's like, what do you, like, that demonstrates the extent of how fucking brainwashed she has been. And I mean, you can't say enough good things about Rebecca Hall's performance here.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't want to get into too much heavy stuff on this, but I will say that I totally get what she experienced. The relapse is horrifying and is a thing that I've had a fear of a lot in my life. But that, like, trying to explain, oh, I let him do this to me and there's not really an explanation of why. It's one of those things of just like, you don't understand because you weren't there. It wasn't like this. It was a gradual thing. He was so nice. Then he did a little thing and that was okay. And then he was really nice about it afterwards. And you're seeing it happen in the office of, oh, you were in the park in an uncomfortable position for many hours. Nobody else knows how strong you are. And he's complimenting her. He's saying, like, you're not weak for giving in to me. You're showing your strength. And it just, this movie fucked me up.
Yeah, it's a hell of a display. I can't say enough either about Tim Roth. His character,
who I have weird feelings about already.
Right. I mean, his character obviously is awful and terrible and really horrific in a number of ways. But the performance and execution of it, he and Rebecca Hall together. You know what, Michelle? We've talked enough about this movie at this point that I ultimately really have convinced myself that my only real complaints about the movie are mostly related to just, I feel like, as with a lot of movies, I think this one could have been maybe about 15, 20 minutes shorter. I did think some things, but I can't think of a legitimate thing that this movie actually did poorly. We're giving this one the double 5. This is I'm not going to let some fucking ridiculous spoiler experience ruin this review. The more I sit here and talk about it, the more I'm just like, yeah, this is a really, like, because it is like, this is a particularly wild story, but how many times have you heard somebody talk about how like you know, they tried to tell us but none of us believed them and it wasn't nearly this maddening, right? Like, it wasn't nearly this insane. And I think that's kind of the point, is you illustrate that idea by going to that extreme. And I thought it functioned on a lot of awesome levels. I do also want to quickly point out this movie, just out of nowhere, right about in the middle of it, has one of the fucking greatest jump scares I've ever experienced in a long time. When she's in the hotel room and all of a sudden that lady just starts shouting "Get out" at her because you think it's David has come back and is standing in the doorway. Fuck, that was glorious. That was so good.
Did you cheer out loud when she pulled the second knife out of her leg wrapping?
Yes, I sat there the whole time. The whole time I was like, she better have a second knife in her pant leg. She better.
I bet she had a third and a fourth. She was ready.
And she had a second knife in her pant
I got so
leg.
excited for that.
I was like, yeah, it's yeah, and I just, this was I really. Man, what a fucking bummer that I didn't get to have that experience, but like, that's not the movie's fault, man. This is a hell of a fucking movie.
Yeah. I knew I was going to have a really hard time summing it up within the length of a reasonable podcast. Like this movie or episode has probably gotten a little too long. But I'm glad that we could at least like get into some of the parts, because I went back and forth so much. And unless you have a life experience that you can relate to that is similar to Rebecca's, you're not going to get it. And this will be harder for you to be on board with potentially.
For sure.
And so it's hard to explain, because it's like, yeah, I get it. She was insane. She's embarrassed about being insane. She feels guilty for it. And now she's doing it again. And that's the real horror of this movie. It's not even so much the ending. It's the fact that he was able to get back into her head just immediately.
Right.
That's the really true scary part of this. And
then also the
movie.
baby in his guts.
I mean, I guess that part was like a nice happy ending. Everybody's happy.
This movie ultimately is another example of one of my favorite kinds of horror stories. You see it also in a movie like Saint Maud or a movie like The Witch, which is this very slow, psychological, moody, creepy burn to this explosion of like, what the fuck? I love those kind of movies. Audition is probably one of the utmost examples. But this is another great entry in that this one. What a year for horror it's been, Michelle.
Yeah, I was really excited for October because a lot of these I had on my list anyway. So when I saw that they were getting released on Shudder, I got very excited, and I'm glad we got to end with this one as the last exclusive and/or original. But don't worry, folks, we've still got 2 more coming out in October.
We've got Hellbender tomorrow, and then the big surprise finish on Monday.
Yep, big surprise finish. It is.
It's a good one.
I think you got angrier today than you did during the Halloween episode the first time.
Oh yeah, maybe roughly the same. Maybe. Yeah, for sure.
It's on par. But they'll have to figure out what the movie is on Halloween to figure out what we're talking about.
Is it a trick or is it a treat? We're gonna find out, guys. We're gonna find out.
Both.
It's both.
Yeah. If you listen this far, gold star for you.
Yeah, Star Wars Sparkles, guys. If you've listened,
I'm sorry that I rambled. I had so many thoughts, and it was so hard to get them out. I just love this movie.
And I'm glad that you did, because again, a lot of your elements are a lot of what made me realize I definitely enjoyed this movie more than my experience of it was able to allow. But yeah, this was real good, and I'm glad we got to see it and talk about it, and I don't know how to end episodes. You probably already follow us on some kind of social media, but if you don't, we're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. It's at We Watch Shudder on all of those things. What else should we talk about, Michelle? Is that it?
I think at 52 minutes, we're good.
Yeah.
We can let them go.
Thanks for tolerating us,
got
guys.
Things to do.
This is, I mean, we're only about half the length of the actual movie at this point, so it's not so bad.
I know. And yet we did not sum it up as well as the movie did. Damn it. We didn't give a quicker synopsis. Somehow we left out so much.
Oh, Lord. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.